Versace is currently experiencing something that almost no luxury brand has ever faced. And from everything that has happened over the past 3 decades, it is clear this brand was never going to stay the same after that summer morning in Miami. But here is what makes this story so insane. This was not a brand that slowly declined. This was a brand that lost its founder in the most shocking way possible and had to figure out if it could even survive. A brand that went from defining excess in the 90s to being sold off completely. So what really happened, and how did Versace go from the most provocative name in fashion to just another luxury brand owned by a corporate parent? Today we will be diving into what really happened to Versace. How Gianni Versace turned Italian passion into a global empire. Why the brand became synonymous with supermodels, celebrities, and unapologetic excess. What Gianni's personal world looked like behind the glamour. How everything changed on one morning in July 1997. Why questions about that day still do not have clear answers. How Donatella went from being in her brother's shadow to carrying the entire company on her shoulders. Why the brand had to completely reinvent itself to survive. What corporate ownership really changed, and whether Versace today is still the same brand Gianni created. But you know what has not changed? Your ability to support this channel. So hit that subscribe button and let us get on with the video. Gianni Versace was born in southern Italy in 1946 in Reggio Calabria, right at the toe of the Italian boot. This wasn't Milan or Rome or Florence. This was a region that was poorer, more traditional, more connected to old ways. His mother ran a small dressmaking business, and Gianni grew up watching her work, learning about fabric and construction and what made clothes beautiful. But what really shaped him was everything around him. Ancient Greek ruins, Baroque architecture, the Mediterranean color and light, the mythology and art that was just part of the landscape. Southern Italy is dramatic in every way. The colors are more intense, the history is older, the culture is more passionate. That environment got into everything Gianni would create. He moved to Milan in 1972, which was where Italian fashion was actually happening. He started designing for other brands, learning the business, building connections. By 1978, he launched his own label. From the very first collection, Versace was different. Italian fashion at that time was already known for quality and luxury, but it followed certain rules about elegance and restraint. Versace ignored all of that. His clothes were bold, sexual, colorful, aggressive. He used prints that referenced Greek mythology, Baroque art, and Italian Renaissance paintings. He mixed high culture references with modern sex appeal. The clothes weren't quiet or subtle or understated. They announced themselves. They demanded attention. What made Versace explode in the 80s and 90s was perfect timing. The world was changing. After decades of minimalism and restraint, culture was swinging hard toward excess. Wall Street was making young people insanely rich overnight. Music videos and MTV meant fashion was suddenly visual entertainment. Celebrity culture was becoming massive, and fashion was moving from something exclusive and private into something public and loud. Versace understood this better than anyone. He did not just make clothes for rich people who wanted to look elegant. He made clothes for people who wanted to be seen, who wanted to make statements, who wanted power and sex and luxury all announced at once. The supermodel era was basically created by Versace. He took models like Naomi Campbell, Linda Evangelista, Cindy Crawford, and Christy Turlington and made them celebrities in their own right. Before Versace, models were basically anonymous clothes hangers. Gianni treated them like stars. He paid them massive amounts, gave them front row seats at shows, partied with them, and made them part of his personal circle. He understood that the models themselves were selling the clothes as much as the designs were. When those supermodels walked his runway together, it was not just a fashion show. It was an event. It was power and beauty and excess made visible. The line about not waking up for less than $10,000 a day came from that era. From Versace paying models what seemed like insane money, and those models being worth every penny because they moved product. Celebrities became obsessed with Versace, not just wearing the clothes, but being associated with the brand. Princess Diana wore Versace and was photographed constantly. Elton John became personal friends with Gianni. Madonna, Prince, and every major music star wanted Versace because it matched their energy. This was not conservative luxury that whispered. This was luxury that shouted. The safety pin dress that Elizabeth Hurley wore in 1994 became one of the most famous dresses in history. It was held together with giant gold safety pins, was barely there, and was provocative in ways that fashion usually was not. That dress got more press attention than most entire fashion collections. That was Versace, making clothes that became news, that became culture, that people who did not care about fashion still talked about. The Medusa logo became instantly recognizable worldwide. The Baroque prints, the bright colors, the gold detailing, all of it was excessive and unapologetic about being excessive. Versace was not trying to be tasteful. Taste is for people who worry about what others think. Versace was for people who wanted everyone to know exactly how much money and power and confidence they had. It was maximalism as a philosophy. More color, more pattern, more gold, more sex, more everything. And it worked because the 80s and 90s were about more. Minimalism seemed boring. Restraint seemed weak. Versace gave people permission to be loud and proud about luxury. Gianni's personal world was more complex than the public image. He was openly gay at a time when that was still genuinely risky in many places, including parts of the fashion industry. He lived with his partner Antonio D'Amico for 15 years. They had homes together, lived together, and were committed to each other in ways that went beyond the party lifestyle. Gianni was intensely private about some things, even while being a public figure. He gave interviews about fashion, about his work, about the brand, but he was less open about his personal life, his relationships, his inner thoughts. What people saw was the glamorous public Gianni, always surrounded by celebrities, supermodels, and parties. What they did not see was someone more complicated, more thoughtful, more vulnerable. His sister Donatella was always there. She was younger, blonde, glamorous in her own way, but living completely in Gianni's shadow. She worked for the company, had creative input, and was part of the inner circle. But make no mistake, Versace was Gianni's vision. Donatella influenced things, especially the advertising and image, but Gianni was the designer, the creative force, the genius everyone recognized. His brother Santo ran the business side, managed the money, and kept the company functioning. The three siblings were the core of Versace. But Gianni was the sun everything orbited around. The press attention was constant and overwhelming. Gianni could not go anywhere without cameras. Every outfit, every party, every vacation was documented. The attention was part of building the brand, part of why Versace became so famous. But it also made privacy impossible. And it meant that when tragedy came, it came in the most public way imaginable. July 15th, 1997, Miami Beach. Gianni Versace had been staying at his mansion on Ocean Drive, this beautiful Art Deco building he had restored. He walked to a nearby cafe that morning to get magazines and coffee. Just a normal morning walk. He was 50 years old, still designing, still running the company, still at the height of his creative powers. He walked back to his mansion steps just after 9 in the morning. As he was putting his key in the door, someone walked up behind him and shot him twice in the head at point-blank range. He died instantly on the steps of his own home. The killer was Andrew Cunanan, a 27-year-old man who had been on the FBI most wanted list for months. Cunanan had already killed 4 other people in a murder spree across several states. He was targeting gay men, people he knew or claimed to know, killing seemingly at random. The FBI had been hunting him. His face was all over the news, and he had somehow made it to Miami Beach, where he had been hiding for months. He shot Gianni Versace on those steps, walked away calmly, and disappeared into the crowds of South Beach. 8 days later, police cornered him on a houseboat 2 miles away. Cunanan shot himself before they could capture him. The reaction was immediate and massive. News crews descended on Miami Beach within hours. The fashion world went into shock. Celebrities who had been friends with Gianni were giving tearful interviews. Princess Diana, who had been photographed in Versace just weeks earlier, was devastated. Elton John, who had been one of Gianni's closest friends, was destroyed. The mansion became a memorial site with flowers and candles and notes from people around the world. This was not just the death of a designer. This was the shocking, violent murder of someone who represented glamour and beauty and luxury, killed in the most brutal way possible. But here is where things get complicated. The police said it was a random killing, that Cunanan had no connection to Versace and picked him opportunistically because he was famous and accessible. That became the official story. But it never fully made sense to everyone. Cunanan had been killing people he knew or claimed to know. Gianni was different. He was a global celebrity in a way the other victims were not. Some people insisted there had to be more to the story. Rumors spread that Cunanan and Versace had met before, maybe in San Francisco's gay community, maybe at clubs or parties. Nothing was ever proven, but the speculation persisted. Other theories grew darker. Some suggested Cunanan was a sex worker who had clients in common with Versace's circles. Some thought there were financial or personal motivations that never came out. Some believed organized crime was involved because of Versace's wealth and because Cunanan needed money. The problem is that Cunanan killed himself, so he never explained anything. He never gave a motive, never confessed, never clarified what he was thinking or why he did what he did. All of the other victims' families had to live with questions too. But Versace's murder was so public, so shocking, that the questions felt bigger. What is clear is that something about the official story bothered people. Maybe it was too simple. Maybe people could not accept that someone as important as Gianni Versace could die for no reason beyond being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the reality is that sometimes there are no satisfying answers. Sometimes violence is random and senseless. Sometimes terrible things happen without complex explanations. The questions remain because Cunanan made sure they would by killing himself. The impact on the Versace company was catastrophic. Gianni wasn't just the founder and chief designer, he was the brand's identity. Everything Versace meant came from him. His vision, his aesthetic, his understanding of luxury and sexuality and excess, all of it was personal to him. And suddenly he was gone, violently, without warning, without time to prepare a succession plan or transition leadership or train someone to take over. The company went into shock along with everyone else. Santo, the business brother, had to hold things together financially. But the creative side, the design side, the side that actually made Versace what it was, needed someone immediately. There was no time to search for a new designer or bring in outside talent or figure out a long-term strategy. Someone had to step into Gianni's role right away because fashion operates on schedules. Shows are planned months in advance. Collections are being worked on constantly. Buyers need to see product. The machine can't just stop. Donatella was the only option. She'd been close to Gianni, worked with him for years, understood his vision better than anyone else alive. But she'd never been the lead designer. She'd never carried a collection by herself. She'd never been responsible for creating a Versace collection from scratch. And now she had to do it while grieving her brother, while the world watched, while the company's future hung in the balance. The pressure was unimaginable. Her first collection after Gianni's death was met with mixed reactions. Some people were supportive, understanding that she was dealing with impossible circumstances. Others were critical, saying it didn't have Gianni's genius, that it felt like an imitation. Fashion critics can be brutal, and many were. Donatella was compared constantly to her brother, and the comparisons were rarely flattering. She was too blonde, too thin, too much the celebrity face of the brand rather than the creative genius behind it. The whispers were that Versace couldn't survive without Gianni, that Donatella was a placeholder, that the brand was living on borrowed time. But Donatella kept working. She had to learn on the job, under pressure, with everyone watching and many people waiting for her to fail. She made mistakes. Some collections were criticized heavily. The brand's profits struggled. Financial problems that had been manageable under Gianni became serious. There were questions about whether the company could survive independently or if it would need to be sold. The early 2000s were genuinely uncertain for Versace. What saved Donatella eventually was that she stopped trying to be Gianni. For the first several years, she tried to continue his vision, to make collections he would have approved of, to keep Versace exactly what it had been. But that was impossible. Gianni was irreplaceable. His specific genius, his particular eye, his exact sensibility, those could not be copied or continued. Donatella had to become herself as a designer, instead of trying to be her brother's shadow. The shift happened gradually through the 2000s. Donatella started making Versace her own. She kept the bold sexuality, the luxury, and the glamour, but she added her own sensibilities. She made pieces slightly more modern, slightly more wearable, slightly less baroque, and more streamlined. She developed relationships with a new generation of celebrities. She understood social media and how fashion was changing in the digital age. She made Versace relevant to people who had not been born when Gianni was alive. The celebrity partnerships became crucial. Jennifer Lopez, wearing that green jungle dress to the Grammys in 2000, became one of the most iconic fashion moments of the decade. That dress was searched so much on Google that it led to the creation of Google Images. That is the kind of cultural impact Versace still had under Donatella. Lady Gaga, Beyoncé, and the biggest stars of the 2000s and 2010s wore Versace constantly. The brand stayed connected to pop culture, stayed visible, and stayed relevant even as fashion changed dramatically. Staying relevant creatively does not always mean staying solvent financially. By the early 2010s, Versace was facing serious business problems. The fashion industry had changed. Luxury conglomerates like LVMH and Kering had bought up most major brands, and independent luxury brands were struggling to compete. Versace was family-owned, which meant limited capital, limited ability to expand, and limited resources to compete with the massive luxury groups. The debt was growing and profit margins were tight. Something had to change. In 2018, Versace was sold to Michael Kors Holdings, which renamed itself Capri Holdings to reflect its portfolio of brands. The sale price was over $2 billion. The Versace family, including Donatella and Santo, sold their stakes. Donatella stayed on as creative director, but the brand was no longer family-owned. It was now part of a corporate luxury group, answerable to shareholders, to quarterly earnings, and to all the obligations that come with corporate ownership. That sale marked the end of something fundamental. Versace was no longer a family business expressing one person's vision. It was a brand managed by a corporation, optimized for profitability, for global growth, and for market share. The creative direction could remain similar, and Donatella still designs the collections. But the soul of it, the essential nature of what Versace was, changed with corporate ownership. It had to. Corporate brands operate differently. They focus test ideas, and they worry about alienating customers. They make decisions based on data rather than intuition. They are safer, more calculated, more designed to succeed in predictable ways. Versace today is successful by most metrics. It's profitable, it's global, it's expanding into new markets. The stores are beautiful, the clothes are well made. Donatella's recent collections have gotten genuinely positive reviews. The brand has managed to stay relevant in an incredibly competitive luxury market. For a brand that lost its founder so violently and traumatically, the fact that it still exists at all is impressive. But here's the question nobody can fully answer. Is it still Versace? Is the brand today what Gianni created, or is it something else wearing the same name? The Medusa logo is the same. The bold prints are similar. The focus on sexuality and glamour continues. But the spirit, the excessive, dangerous, unapologetic spirit that defined Versace in the 90s, is that still there? Or has it been smoothed out, made safer, optimized for corporate success? Gianni's legacy in fashion is enormous and permanent. He proved that fashion could be provocative and commercial at the same time. He showed that sexuality and luxury could be overt rather than subtle and still be taken seriously. He elevated supermodels into celebrities and understood celebrity culture before most of fashion did. He brought Baroque and classical art references into modern clothing in ways that made them exciting rather than stuffy. He made maximalism cool when minimalism was everywhere. Every designer working with bold prints, with overt sexuality, with Baroque references, with supermodel campaigns, they are all working in territory Gianni established. But the tragedy reshaped everything. Versace, after 1997, has always been defined by Gianni's absence. Every collection Donatella designs exists in conversation with what he might have done. Every business decision gets measured against what the brand was when he was alive. The murder became part of the brand's story in ways that can't be separated. When people think about Versace, they think about the glamour and the supermodels and the excess, but they also think about those steps in Miami, about the shocking end, about the violence that took the founder away. What Versace represents today is complicated. To people who remember the 90s, it represents a specific moment when fashion was at its most excessive and glamorous. It represents Gianni's genius and vision. It represents tragedy and loss, and the question of whether a brand can survive losing its founders so dramatically. To younger people who discovered Versace later, it represents Donatella's version, the slightly different aesthetic she has developed, the celebrity connections and Instagram moments and modern luxury. Both versions are real, both are Versace, but they are not quite the same thing. The brand name still carries weight. Wearing Versace still means something. It still suggests boldness and confidence and luxury, but it has become safer, more predictable, more corporate. The danger and edge and genuine provocation that Gianni brought, that is mostly gone. And maybe that is inevitable. Maybe no brand can maintain that level of intensity forever. Maybe survival requires compromise and evolution and becoming something more palatable to wider audiences. Or maybe it is proof that some things cannot be replaced, that when you lose a singular vision, what comes after is necessarily different, even if it is good in its own ways. Looking at Versace's complete story, what stands out is how much one person mattered. Gianni Versace created something so personal, so tied to his specific vision and sensibility, that losing him nearly destroyed the brand. The fact that it survived at all required enormous effort and sacrifice from Donatella and Santo. The fact that it is successful today means they did something right. But it also means the brand had to change, had to become something Gianni never intended, had to make compromises he might not have accepted. Maybe that is the real legacy. Not just what Gianni created, but what happened after. The story of how a brand tries to continue when its founder is gone, when there is no succession plan, when tragedy forces change immediately. The story of a sister stepping into impossible circumstances and slowly, painfully finding her own way. The story of a family business becoming corporate property because that is what survival required. The story of a name that meant something specific becoming something broader and safer and more commercial. Versace. Today is successful, professional, globally present, financially stable. All of that matters. All of that is real achievement. But it is not what Gianni created. It is what became necessary to keep the name alive. And maybe that is enough. Maybe preservation matters more than purity. Or maybe something essential was lost when the brand stopped being dangerous and became merely luxurious. Both things can be true at the same time. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this kind of content, please comment, like, and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And as ever, I really do look forward to seeing you all in the next one.